Here we go. Tommy's starting. This is a private meeting with our family, and I just pray that we have a positive res- results, open and clear. Thank Jesus. Here we go.
Hi, Jerry.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, now I'm on audio.
Let's see.
Hello, Mike.
Hello, nice to see you. Me too.
Yeah.
I see your pictures, but
You see me live now. Hey, Tommy.
now you're live.
How you doing, Tommy?
How are you, Jerry?
Great, great.
Hi,
Hello,
Mike.
Tommy.
How are you, sir?
Good, good. It's a beautiful day in Minnesota today.
It's a
Not
nice
making
day.
ice, but it's still unique.
Yeah. It's almost 70 here.
Well, it's gonna hit almost 50 here in Minnesota.
Oh,
which is probably-
nice. Yeah,
I
that's
know.
cool. Yeah.
It's too warm.
Yeah.
Take it as it comes. We won't be ice fishing anytime soon, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, let's first of all, I appreciate having the meeting and being able to host this meeting. As I said, I'm honored to do that. And we got a little sad news about our cousin Val,
Yes.
but she's on her way to recovery.
Oh, I didn't know about.
Yeah, well, she over the weekend she started getting like cold-like symptoms, and Tommy was going to be having a training session with her, weren't you, Tommy?
Yes.
So finish the story, please.
Oh, we were just going to work on Zoom. That's all. And so I got an email today that said she said that she had tested positive for COVID-19. Is that correct?
Yes.
Wow.
Mm.
That's not good.
Yeah, and so we bringing you up to date with that information, Mike. And she said that she's taking all the protocols, and she wanted me to let everybody know that she's on recovery, and she wants to meet again, like in about 3 weeks from now, when everything once she's in better state. So I said, of course.
Okay.
Good.
So that's
My brother Pat won't be joining us today.
Okay. That's it's a process, all this.
He said he would. Well, he had a court appearance, of course, by Zoom. So he says he'll try to make it in, but he says you never know how long these things last.
Mm-hmm.
He's an attorney in a part of child protection now, where he represents parents and or children that are kind of in homes that are just having a hard time surviving. So it's a long process before they can unite some of them. So
Yeah, I definitely.
He's hoping to be out of that work in 6 months to a year. Okay, so it's just the three of us then?
Yeah, but we're expecting Dr. J. She should be able to. She should be joining pretty soon. Juana.
Okay.
Was it Juanita?
Okay.
Yeah. And she is the wife of Edward Moss, and who passed away a few years ago. And they were married for 65 years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And she lives in, they say Val's in Maryland, I believe. Juanita's in Virginia. So we'll see how that goes with them joining and taking consideration. This is the process. This journey we're on. We all take our time and check information, do our research, and verify the information as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mike, did that help when I sent you that email about the O being the numerical?
Well, what the problem was is I tried to enter the meeting a minute before or a minute after I sent you that email. Then it launched, and then I got in. I just copied your password from your email, inserted it, and then it wouldn't work. So I wasn't certain, and then it opened up. So we're good.
Oh, good. So
I don't trust myself unless I'm writing the numbers down, especially with passwords. And
tell me about it. This is what I have: a log book, daily log. So that's how I keep up with everything.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, you got a log book and keep. With my vocation in engineering, civil engineering, I would always take notes and at meetings, and I free my mind up. My mind is not a computer, so I just keep it as clear as possible. But I can resort back to my information, my documentation, and then I can follow through, and it keeps me on point. And when I do share messages, I have the information as I received it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked to my children as they were growing up. I taught them to. It's pretty much it's called journaling, journal, and it's helped me. And now with this technology, I have to be transparent. I would be in meetings with clients, with engineering clients, the owners, whether it's a municipal agency, a private owner, or different kind of meetings. I would pull out my notebook and take a few notes. But with the technology now, with my cell phone, I would record the meetings.
Yeah. Then what would you do with it? I know. Then you have to listen to them again.
Yeah, then I'd have the information when I go back to do a report and give the information. I have it then, Yeah, that's the process. So let's have some opening comments while we wait on Juanita, and I'll start to give you a overview. Now, my name is Jerry Brent Moss Sr., and I am originally born and raised in the Midwest in Omaha, Nebraska. And that's where, when I was in my youth, we had different activities with the YMCA, the boys clubs of Omaha. And one of the philanthropists in Omaha was Warren Buffett, him and his family. And so they donated to the boys club. And right after the riots in 1968, we had serious riots there in Omaha. The community came together and started giving out funds and giving opportunities to those who were prepared. And, my family, my brothers and myself, we were. And so I was able to get a scholarship to go to Technical College, Southeast Community College in Milford. And I took up civil engineering design. And so that's where my base started. And then I stayed there. I was there were six, it was in the country, right in Lincoln, Nebraska. I live in Omaha, so it was about 55 miles. And then outside of Lincoln, there was, that's where the college was, Southeast Community College. And so another thing out of transparency, six Black students started, and I'm the only one that finished after 2 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And it propelled me through my career and my vocation as a civil engineering designer and drafter. And that being said, we had a nice roast for Johnny Rogers, who was a Heisman Trophy winner for the University of Nebraska through the Boys Club Philanthropy. I grew up with him in Omaha, and he invited my wife and me to come out and visit him because he had got drafted by the San Diego Chargers, and come out and visit him in California. So this was in April. Mike, we're talking about the weather. It was in April. So here, I'm a Midwest person. I took him up on that, moved out here. I visited him in April, and man, I couldn't believe it. It was like, my term, I use it, heaven on earth.
Mm-hmm.
For me, all the colors, the ocean, it was really gratifying. We eventually moved here. I've been in the engineering profession. I call it a working retirement. I'm going to work until I drop in some capacity in engineering, through teaching people, sharing with them. I do construction management now. And now that I had a desire to learn about my father's side of the family, the Mosses, and all I knew was my uncles, because I saw them and I knew them as my father's brothers and sisters. They're brothers. They didn't have any sisters that was living at this particular time, but I knew my uncles, and I developed these behaviors. You learn by example. I learned what type of men these Moss men were, because we had a nuclear family, and the Midwest and Nebraska, they worked. They worked in the packing houses, so they had jobs. And but the family originated from Arkansas, and from Arkansas to Oklahoma, briefly to the Moss family, briefly to Kansas City, but they settled in Omaha, Nebraska. This particular cluster that we're talking about. So, that's a little background information. So I wanted to know more about the family. My grandfather, he got killed by a jealous nephew at a young age, like 36 years old. A jealous nephew wanted to interact within the family, and my grandfather said no. So, they lived in the country out there in Oklahoma, and he, while they were out there, legend has it that he had my grandfather had a moonshine operation out there, so out in the woods. So, but this nephew came and took his life. So I didn't have very much information on my grandfather.
Oh, which grandfather would this be?
His name is David Moss.
His
name is David Moss. David Moss Sr. And so all of his sons, though, he had like during those times, all those families had a number of kids, but all his sons and his daughters, they stuck together, and they told the authorities in Oklahoma after he, my grandmother, Ethel Burnell, had about 9 kids or something like that, and they wanted to take the kids away from her, the authorities, and send them to foster homes. And my grandmother said, no, there's nothing you can do to separate me from my family and take my kids away from me. So what happened is her family and the Mosses, they got together and they kept that family intact. And and so the journey it begun, and they stayed together. So that's just a little intro, and I wanted to know more about him. And I never knew if he had brothers or sisters, you guys. And what happened is my uncle was a historian. His name was a family historian, Hubert Moss. That's my daddy's brother, Hubert Moss. And he would go to these different reunions, family reunions in Arkansas, because my grandmother would go back and visit her sisters in Arkansas, because that's where our cluster is from there. Nevada County, Taylor, Willisville, Prescott. Those are our clusters. They settled. And so one time there was a reunion for my grandmother side of the family out here in California, in Irvine, the Burnells. So my Uncle Hubert asked me, hey Jerry, could you attend that? Because I won't be able to come out. And I did. And guys, I went to that reunion. It was like maybe 20 years ago. And I saw these family members on my grandmother's side, and they looked just like my brother, my uncles, stubby, short. They all looked, they was all family. So that intrigued me. And I built a rapport with them. And from then on, I took that baton, technically, to be the family historian. And until my uncle passed away, and I definitely started doing the research to find out about my ancestors, and we're blessed to have the technology now to have where we were separated through no means of our own, to slavery. And then they had the Reconstruction period where families were trying to get back together, which was difficult for the Black families. And now here we are, this many years later, they got this science called DNA. Whew. Hasn't it been a journey with this, you guys? So
yes.
So what I did is, when I did take the DNA test, I said I'm going to do my research based off of the science and from verification, by talking to people and going through records. And so that's how I started. And now everything that, we touch, it turns to gold. That's what I look at. It turns to gold. So I'm treasure hunting every day. And I don't want to be the one that didn't share, that didn't leave the story of my ancestors in the grave. My goal and purpose is to keep us connected and minimize what my kids and what my descendants are going to have to search. I'm gonna provide as much as I can through this medium, and then they can take it and run with it. So that's my story on this journey, and I can tell you this, but both of you guys, the good Lord, I'll be 70 years old in the 22nd December, and I have been blessed to research the Moss name, to the origins, and from the slavery 1850, and through this DNA, I've been able to, through my science, I've been able to identify descendants of my ancestors. And when you hear now I'm not saying to be pompous or anything, but when you hear the last name Moss from our cluster of families in Arkansas, I am one of the original descendants of that family of Mosses. I am one of the originals.
That's excellent.
Of our cluster. Now, there's a number of them, but I can tell you, I'm one of the original living members who have done research that I've seen so far to this degree of our cluster. Believe me, I want to keep it. I want to keep it in my lane. And Tommy, you know more about that. About like when you were talking about the Reuben Moss, the Reverend Reuben, and all that. It goes back. But that I did want to share that with you. And let me tell you guys what's been happening with this DNA. When I reach out to different relatives, I don't match a lot of these younger relatives. I match their grandmothers and grandfathers. So they want to be, they said, Jerry, you match my grandfather or my grandmother, 92 years old. I match them. But I don't match these ones that are the more current ones. So that just tells you, the value of this program, especially when you use it as a tool of communications. And I'll share this last statement. This DNA research is serious, it's fun, and it's like a beautiful rose, or beautiful red rose. When they bloom, whoa, and they look beautiful. They say, wow, look at that beautiful rose. But roses have thorns. And
bugs.
Man, they have thorns, guys. And so that's part of the prep. That's part of the roles in the development. We have to deal with some thorny issues. And God is the source. I just tell people I'm not the source of this, but I am a messenger. And I just be as private and personal and structure around helping, not, like in respecting individuals' privacy. So that's my story on this that I wanted to share with you for feedback. And after each of you give your intro, we'll take it further. So we're gonna go with you, Tommy, next, and then we're gonna go with our guest of honor, Mike, to give him a little bit more feedback. Go, Tommy.
All right. I think my story probably started. My parents and my uncle took me to a cemetery here in Texas, and it was a real small cemetery out in the middle of nowhere, and it had a lot of people with my surname that I didn't know, and I wanted to know more about them. So I started doing a lot of research on the Lewis family, and lots of DNA, lots of looking around, this and that. That was the first milestone. I probably think the second milestone may be when Val contacted me, and I realized that I had more work to do, and we got to talking about the Moss family name. And I knew that my father's.
Hello. Who is it? Okay. We're gonna work with you to do that. Okay. All right.
That somebody's going to join.
Yeah. That is. This is. Let's see. Let me do this. This is our cousin Juanita.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is Juanita. All right. So let's we want to walk you through the process. Where are you at in this process so far?
I went to the message that you sent to me on 12. Yeah, your private Zoom meeting on today, right? From 2 to 4 p.m. And it goes down and it has join with Google Meet. I don't know what that is. It went way down. This is where I get on other Zooms. It said meeting ID, passcode, and the 0 and passcode is numerical. Numerical 0. And then I tried. I clicked on the join Zoom meeting. That's what I did. And then I tried to put in the passcode.
So what happened when you did that?
Beg your pardon?
What happened when you did the put in the passcode?
Nothing.
Which passcode did you?
Error.
Which passcode did you put in?
7A0U2U.
And that 0 is the numerical 0. It's not the
right.
alpha.
Right. It's not an O. I put a F.
And they're all caps.
Yes. Yep.
So,
error.
but did it allow you to, did it give you information about joining the meeting, that you could join it? How close did you get to joining the meeting?
I don't know what you're saying.
How close did you get to joining the meeting? When you clicked on my meeting ID, did you click on the meeting ID? That's the one.
No, I clicked on join Zoom meeting.
Well, there's a link that has the meeting ID, and it has 444- such and such. That's the.
I see that, but that's before the passcode, and those are not in blue, so that I could click on them. Where it says join Zoom meeting. I'm gonna click on that again.
Okay.
I'm gonna click on it again. The previous page is sending you to that one that's 4444. Let me see if that one.
Right.
Redirect.
Yeah, that's the meeting. That's my meeting ID number.
Okay, now it says enter meeting password. Now I'm putting the phone down so that I can do that again. 7, capital A, 0, capital U, 2. That's 2. That's not a Z, right?
Yes.
2, capital U, right. And then I click on join the meeting, and it says enter meeting password. That's what I just put in there.
No, put the password in now.
What?
No, it's not no 1. The meeting password is the 70. You're real close.
No, it gave me 7A.
Yeah, 7A0. Well, you're right there, and they're asking you for it, right? Yeah.
Enter meeting password. Password was incorrect.
Did you use 7, capital A, numeric 0, capital U, capital U?
Capital U. Nobody else is having this problem?
No.
Don't like me, because I usually just jump on these Zoom things. I go right to it.
Okay, well, we're going to give you one more try at it. And what is it telling you to do now?
Because the password was incorrect. Please try again. For the third time if I try again.
Okay, I tell you what we're going to do with you. You still can participate in the meeting. You can do it audio just right where you're at right now.
I'm on my computer.
Well, right now we can listen to you on the phone, and and they're here too, and they can, you know, I took my speaker off. You'll be able to hear them too. I have Mike, and no, you're not on the computer.
Oh, okay. I'm on the computer. I'm on my phone.
Yeah, well, we can hear you. You know, the guys can hear you too.
Okay. Yeah. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
You gotta do better for me next time.
Yeah.
Cause I'm an old lady, you know.
Ain't nothing old about you but your money.
The launch meeting, I'm not there yet because the launch meeting, I tried the launch meeting for the launch. So I'm turning off my computer and I'm just on my phone, right? That's what you want me to do.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. Can you guys hear her?
Yes.
Very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Tommy, what we were doing, Val, Juanita, we were given a brief introduction to who we are, and some of our little history. And I'm going to interrupt Tommy because we have a woman on the line, and women first. In
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So could you tell us something, just a little story about, who you are, and just tell a story about, your connections to the family and what it means to be, involved in ancestry, and, what your purpose is. You have the mic.
Okay, I have the mic. Okay. I am substituting for my daughter, who is the mom. She is still working. She does not have time right now to be involved. But you know how life goes by, and people say, "Oh, I wish I had talked to so and so. I wish I had gotten information from so and so while they were alive." Well, I'm almost 89, so therefore, whatever people want to know, they need to ask me now, and that's why I'm telling everybody what I know. Now, I'm filling in for her. I'm also subbing for Val today, who is not well. I have to pray for her health. I married the oldest member of that Moss family, Edward Moss, who passed away 6 years now in January. He passed away at 88, had never been ill any time in his life until he developed Parkinson's. So he was the oldest of Ella Moss's children, and the rest of her children are twins, but he was a Moss. He carries the Moss name, and that's passed on to my daughter, who's now married to Green, Moss Green, marriage made in heaven, right? And my son, Eric. So I have been out because of my family, and there was a mystery about my family, and Jerry, I sent the book for you to read and you'll find out what the mystery is. There was a mystery about my family that I saw through 23andMe. I found out who my relatives were 5 generations ago. And so I've been doing this for quite a while, and altogether, since I started writing, I've written 9 books. But the first book that I wrote, I had to write a novel because I didn't know that much about my great-grandfather, and so I wove what I knew about him into history just to make a story for the family. And my editor liked it so much, my publisher, I should say, liked it so much that he we just say this is nonfiction, a historical novel. And it took me 20 years to find the truth, and my last book, Truth of Who My Family Was Before the Civil War. So I think that's all I need to say today. Isn't that enough, Jerry?
Okay, we have a couple questions for you.
Okay. I didn't know you'd give me the whole 4 hours.
I have a question. What can you tell us about your husband, Edward? Where was he born? And
Okay.
did he ever talk about you know, that's my, you know, my cousin. Did he ever talk about uh,
What?
a relative named Edward Moss?
No, oh no, we didn't know anything about the Moss.
Okay.
No. The one that lived out in Omaha?
Yes.
No. I didn't even know that man's name was Edward until I saw it when you wrote it. I didn't know that. I just knew that Grandpa Moss, after he developed dementia, he was living in Omaha, and the family had lost touch with him for many, for years and years and years. We didn't know anything about him. My husband didn't know anything about him. My mother-in-law didn't know anything about him until he developed dementia, and somebody, I cannot tell you who it was, maybe Val would tell you who it was, wrote a letter back to Wilkes-Barre because this person had found an envelope with the name of Ella's grandmother on it. And this
What was Ella's grandmother's name?
Her name was Mrs. Johnson. Yeah, you gotta ask Val. I don't remember everybody's name. her grandmother was Betsy. That was the woman who was married to James Munro Moss.
Okay.
And
Hold it, cuz. Hold it for a second. And the terms I'm gonna use, like, stand down for a second. Okay, gentlemen, hasn't this been some very informative information that she shared?
Yes, she's getting close to the point I think we're all interested in, because this is where all the
I can't hear
start meeting.
He says you're getting close to the point that all of us are interested in.
Especially me.
What is that point?
Well, some of the history that you're talking about, I'm gonna ask a couple more. No, let me ask. Hey, Mike, ask her a question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can't hear anybody.
I'm interested in James Monroe Moss. I guess my interest is in James Monroe Moss, as I've been told by Val. That could likely be my grandfather.
See, James.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, Val. He said that he's interested in James Monroe Moss because he could possibly be his grandfather.
Right, that's what Val said. Yeah.
Uh-huh. All right. So here's what I want to ask you. We're gonna James Monroe Moss. Have you ever met him?
Yes, I met him one time.
What's the story about that?
And what?
Tell us the story.
Oh, well, his son went out to Omaha and took him back to Wilkes-Barre.
What's his son's name?
Lawrence Moss. And then Lawrence was living in Washington, so he took his father to Washington until he died there. But Mr. Reverend Moss had dementia. He didn't know where he was, who he was, or anything. So when I saw him one time, when Lawrence brought him to Wilkes-Barre, and my husband and I lived in New Jersey. So we had to make a point to go up there to meet Grandpa Moss. I don't remember him saying anything. He just was quiet. He was a short man. My husband was a short man, and I think Grandpa Moss was shorter than my husband. And he had gray-green eyes. And you have a picture of him. He was a handsome man. And that is all I know. That was the only time I ever saw him. And we do have a copy of his diploma when he graduated from theology school at Howard University. Val had copies of it. She made copies for everybody in the family. So she could send you a picture of that. She's well. But that's all I know about it.
Another question, Tommy or Mike?
His ministry, where did it take him?
His ministry, where did it take him?
I think Minnesota, maybe, and then Omaha. That's all I know.
What do you know about
From the census, he was in the census a couple years.
Okay, what do you know about Minnesota?
I don't know. I think it just said he might have been. I don't know whether it says that he was a pastor there or not. You'd have to look in the 1920, 1930 censuses to see where he was.
Can you add to that story, Tommy?
No, I can't.
Okay, I will.
This is all good information because she's
Okay,
giving me some.
I will add to it.
All right, good.
So hang in here with us. To answer your question, Mike, what happened is my Uncle James got his degree and in 1911 at Howard University in DC.
Yes.
And what happened is when he went to school, it wasn't only him, there were like three brothers who went to that school for ministry. They were called the Moss Boys. And I got some of that information from the Tidwell family.
Tidwell?
No, Tidwell and the Atkins family.
Oh.
Atkins, because that's Josephine Atkins was one of my ancestors. And jump in, anybody, when you care to. So what happened is,
I have a question.
Go, come on.
About this. That's the only reason I'm interrupting. So do we know how he got from Arkansas? I mean, at some point he's in Arkansas and then now he's in DC or at Howard going to school, right?
Right. Well,
So how did you? It's him and there was him and two brothers. You said
right.
two of his brothers.
They were called the Moss Boys, and if you do your research, I did research on that school, Howard. It had just been it was in its earlier stages, and it's a school of ministry, theology.
Mm.
That's what he went for, theology.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Are you with me, Juanita?
Oh yes. That's where his diploma is from. And so I don't know what denomination he was with. I have never heard that. But how do you get a church? You find one, or a Methodist to get chosen by the bishop, and they send you different places. I have no idea what his denomination was.
He was a Baptist.
Oh, he's a Baptist.
Yes.
Okay. Well, if you can get called to a church, you go there.
Right, and that's what's happened. So let me continue the conversation.
Okay.
So what he did is once he let me go back a little further. You gave a characteristic, a physical characteristic that our family has. When you said those gray-green eyes.
Yes, they're not blue.
Yeah, I have brothers who have those eyes. My brother Stevie has them, and my brother Dale Moss has those same eyes. They have been, that's part of our care that has been passed down through our generation. And my grandfather Dave Moss Sr., he had them. So.
Well, one of Ed's sister's daughter has them. She's the only one that I had seen them until there have been some interracial marriages since that time, and some of them have blue eyes or green eyes. But if that's the only one, and she's probably the middle 50s, the only one who had those eyes, as far as we knew up until that point.
Oh no, we have. That's why this is one reason we had talked earlier. I have, in my family, there's a number of them, my
Yes.
brothers and males and females.
No. Well, it doesn't have anything to do with sex.
Yeah, I know. Well,
That's
that's why I'm clarifying that. Now let's go a little further. I'm gonna take you back a little bit too, because Tommy, you asked how did he get there
Yes.
from Arkansas
Yes.
to Howard. What's happened is it's quite apparent that the slave owner William Moss and that whole family, that family of Mosses, there was a degree of generosity in their family. And when they when the slaves were free, they the owners, they showed favoritism to their slaves, and there have been some interracial um, kids,
yeah.
from this Moss plantation. There has been some of those, because my one of my other ancestors, uh, Reuben Moss, they're called mulattoes.
Yes.
So that's where it's coming into play, right in that area. But to answer your question, Tommy, we had some favor for these guys, and not only that, I will say on an assumption part here that there has been uh, 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 ministers in our family, in the white family, before, like so
Yes.
that's one of the trades that has been passed on. And if you notice in my tree, there's a lot of these mosses that have the same name. They have that Thomas Moss, the black ones.
Yes. Yes.
They have William Moss,
Yes.
and they are the ones who are the ancestors of these guys,
Yes.
these sons. Now I'm gonna move a little bit faster. What happened is, to answer your question, Mike, once he got his degree, my uncle James Munro Moss got his degree, he traveled. And these brothers, they had some influences. They didn't stay in the Arkansas area. Not only him, but his brothers, they traveled. Now, but he had a degree in theology, and part of his travels, he was in Minnesota, and he's on the census, and Val has that information, when he lived in Minnesota. So she has him documented living as part of this in Minnesota. And what they do, they work in Minnesota.
Right, in Minneapolis.
Yeah, work, and they preach.
Yeah, sure.
And so that's where the Minnesota connection is. You want to ask? You got any other? Did that answer your question about Minnesota, Mike? Mike?
It did. He lived in the census showed us he lived in Minneapolis.
What census could you?
Was
Okay,
he connected to a church, or was he a guest?
Yeah,
that was in 1920.
Okay, and you have that record.
The 1920 census.
What does it have? The 1920 census. What does it say about him?
It has him as a minister. He's a minister. And I don't recall if it had his yearly income, but I think I found it off of Val's connection.
Okay.
Or your connection. I just searched his name from your tree. You have the biggest tree of everybody, so yes. Finding Munro Moss and then just searching back and looking around. But the name is so generic of sorts. It took a little bit of searching. Especially since Val said he was in Minneapolis or in Minnesota. So that was the one I found.
And on that record, is it what city? What city was that, Mike? Minneapolis?
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
And it was the 1920 census.
Correct.
what did it have? Did it have an age for him?
It did, but I can't pull it out of my head.
That's fine. Okay.
It showed roommates as well, but none with the same last name. And I don't recall what the roommates did as well as terms of their work.
Okay.
When did James Munro Moss, when did he pass away? How old was he?
Juanita, how old was Uncle James when he passed away?
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, maybe we have a death certificate for him. You might be able to pull that up in Washington, D.C. Just put it you have the double spelling, so you do M-U-N-R-O or M-O-N-R-O-E. James Munro Moss, death certificate, Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And see, and it would be after, it was sometime in the 60s, probably. And it will tell you that. In fact, it might even have his mother and father's name on it. I don't know whether Val pulled up a death certificate. We were working very hard at getting death certificates, so she might have it.
Okay. Tommy.
Yes, sir.
We do have
Yes, sir.
we do have that answer. Okay.
Okay, I'll find it. I had a bad date. I had 1919 as the year he died, and obviously that's incorrect. So I don't know where I got that date or that year, but this is good information.
Oh yeah, that's
I'll
definitely
I'll go back and dig for it.
Yeah, that's a correct. Now,
Yeah. Exactly.
Now, Mike, let's follow up from there. So we know we have him living in Minnesota in 1920. Now, here's where I come into the picture. In 1930 census, he is living in Omaha, Nebraska. He has moved to Omaha, Nebraska. And I have that record right here in my computer. I have that.
Census?
Pardon me? Yeah, 1930 census in Omaha,
Is that
Nebraska.
the census?
Yes. He is living in Nebraska. And he's not only living in Nebraska, he's living with a first cousin named Edward Moss. And Edward was living in Nebraska, and he married the Addis family, and they lived in Omaha, and he worked at the packing houses. He worked at the packing house. And what happened is in Omaha during that time, there were a lot of jobs, and the family migrated to Omaha, and they clustered together. And so James Munro Moss, my uncle, lived with an Edward Moss. And one other thing that happened too, at that same house, his sister, her name is Jeannie Tidwell, but her original name is Jeannie or Virginia Moss. And she married a Tidwell, and he passed away. And so she was a widow when she lived at that same house, 1930 in Omaha, Nebraska, with her brother, and they are listed on the census as first cousins of Edward Moss.
Did you look at the 1940 census for him?
No, I can just.
That's the last census. He might be on that one.
No.
He didn't come to Wilkesburg until 60.
Yeah, but what I'm doing here, and for the family, I'm giving you a migration pattern, and even for some individuals, I can even do it for them. But this is what my uncle James Munro from the time we've talked, the beginning, from where he was born, we've talked about his college. Now we're talking about his vocation, what he did at a couple of places from Minnesota. Now we're in Omaha. And then we also have, obviously what's happened is, by your testimony, Juanita, this Lawrence, his son, went to get his father from where?
Omaha.
Omaha.
Yes.
Now, do y'all see the complete? You see how we're filling this in?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask the question here. You said that so James Munro Moss, was he interracial?
Yes.
You said he had. I thought so. Okay, good. Okay. I thought so. Do we know who his father was?
Yeah, his father's name is Reuben Moss, and his mother's is City, and she was City Roberts. And Reuben was the main one. You know, Reuben.
I see.
And Reuben and City. I'm just gonna take y'all. I'm on the same track, but I'm gonna take y'all down this track with me, just so you know.
Yeah.
James's mother and father was Reuben and City Moss, and they eventually moved to Los Angeles. They were on the 1910 census, living in Prescott, but they moved to Los Angeles with their son, Samuel Frederick Moss. That's where they live, 1612 32nd Street, Los Angeles. That's where our Moss class cluster, they moved to Los Angeles.
So I'm going to ask the same question another way. Was Reuben interracial?
Yes.
Was Reuben his real father, I guess, is the question.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
And Reuben was interracial as well, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And we are Irish.
Yes. So am I. Irish, Scottish. Because there's a link. There's a DNA link here, right? And yeah. I'm trying to figure out how far back, whether it's the DNA link started in Alabama or the DNA link started in Arkansas. Because some of the
no, it's definitely in Arkansas, because that's where Reuben's father.
Reuben's father was born in Alabama.
Right, and Reuben was too.
Yes.
Okay, let me
because that ages out some of the. So I've got it in the. So I descended from the Moss family, right? That's through my parents, through my father. So I'm trying to figure out exactly where the intersection is.
Okay, we'll be able to get to that.
Okay, because it's Arkansas, depending on whether it's Arkansas or Alabama, ages people in and out. Ages men.
Okay, I have two things I'm gonna add to this. First of all, I'm gonna let you know how I am connected to James Munro Moss.
Okay.
James Munro Moss's oldest brother was named Thomas William Moss.
Yes.
And that is my great grandfather.
Yes, I built you. Well, I started with you and went.
Yeah, that is my great grandfather, and that is why I'm just talking to you guys. That is why I really have to focus, and I stayed in areas that I could verify and back it up with my DNA.
Right.
And I have one of my cousins has the Bible of one of my great aunts that has written down documents about my great grandmother and great father. They have it in the Bible. They have it written down.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the deal there. So Val, I mean Juanita,
Yes.
I got a question for you. Did Uncle Monroe have more kids than Lewis?
Lawrence.
Lawrence,
No.
that you know of?
Yes. 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 Yes, that. Yes. No, no. There is a half brother to Lawrence and Ella, but it's not Grandpa Moss's child.
Is Lawrence still alive?
No. No, those folks are older than I am.
Yeah, I'm just asking. I know what you're saying, Lawrence.
Your generation older than I am.
Yeah, okay. Did Lawrence have any kids?
Oh yeah, he has 4.
Are they alive now?
I think one is, her name was Edna Moss. I don't know what her married name is. She lives in Harrisburg. Melena will probably know.
Okay. Now.
In fact, did she send you a picture of a group of people from Wilkes-Barre, and then I'm on it, and 2 of the cousins,
Yes.
Lawrence Jr., we call Billy, and Carl.
Yeah, I've seen those. Okay, Mike. Okay, Mike. We want to hear your story.
Well, my story kind of matches when we did the DNA. That's how I met Jerry, or actually Jerry reached out to my brother Pat, who did it first, and then I followed and we chatted. And the DNA showed that we were connected to Moss. And you can imagine that threw us into a tiz because we were quite surprised. However, the family story is my father asked his father, or his Raleigh McGee, after he came back from the service, if Raleigh was his father, because my dad was definitely darker than any of the McGees that were there. And Raleigh said yes, and that was pretty much the end of it. And now the DNA shows otherwise. We haven't discovered any McGees in our family tree. It's apparent that Monroe Moss is the grandparent. So we're still trying to sort all that out at this point. We haven't figured out how Edna. The other problem we have is with Edna. We don't know who her father is.
Who's Edna?
Edna would be my dad's mother, who was with Munro. And my dad was born in 1918. So, the timeline would push us back into 1917 for when Edna and Munro met up. And shortly after my dad was born, Edna and Raleigh got married, which seemed to be the norm in those days.
Yes.
The other surprise, we're not surprised, but other unknown we're trying to discover is we definitely know who her mother is because of the birth certificates and this and that. We don't know who her father was, but at the time her mother married Edna's stepfather, she was only like 13, but she did not live with her mother. She ended up staying with her grandmother until she became a teenager, and we don't know exactly when she left that family household, because her grandmother died in 1919, which would have put, and Edna was long gone before that. So that's kind of where we're at. We're pretty solid on my mother's side. They're all from Poland, every one of them. We were able to track them back to the 1800s back in Poland and how they came here and where they lived in Minnesota.
That's a fascinating last name. Your mother had?
Kuyaba or
I had to
Kujaba.
Google it because I had never have never seen that last name anywhere. And when I Googled it, it said mostly from Poland area. I'd never seen that last name before.
A lot of them were kind of in Milwaukee and southern Minnesota, and then there was a kind of a pod maybe in St. Paul, but as far as I could tell, we didn't find any relatives. Although my mom's grandfather lived under the Swede Hollow, right next to a Martin Kuyava, but we could never figure out the connection.
Yeah,
probably just maybe wasn't a cousin, that's for sure. So that's kind of where we're at, trying to piece it all together. And
how has it helped by talking to us so far with you, Mike?
well, you're very open and giving me some insights into Grandpa Munro. I prefer to call him Munro because there's so many other names that. And I looked at your tree, I was just kind of taken back and not knowing the whole story. I thought, wow, there's a lot of entries here, and probably a lot more that could be entered in as well. So,
hey, does anybody have any questions for Mike?
I can't hear him, so I don't know what he's asking.
Okay. Do you have a question, Tommy?
I don't. I have a comment is that I have a DNA match to his brother, Pat.
mm-hmm.
And Jerry, you and I talked this. I have a DNA match to Val and Val's niece and several other people from that general part of Arkansas. And so this is fascinating. This is really good information that's being shared here.
We must be matched as well.
I think so. I
recognized your face. It looked like you were in a canoe trip or something. I saw that picture on Ancestry and said, "That's him." Yeah, that's him.
Yeah, exactly. No, so so when Val gave me your name and Pat said, then this pieces are starting to fall into place here, and it's giving me chill bumps thinking about it actually. So
okay, now we're gonna get a little bit more specific here.
Yes, that's because
now that I get to see the white of your eyes, Mike, I've seen you, Tommy.
Yeah.
Mike.
Yes.
What I heard you say is around 1917, Edna could have possibly been in the same area of my great uncle James Munro.
Well, we're going by my dad's date of birth, which was in June. So kind of in that late part of 1917, go back 10 months from June of 1918, it would put us back in July, August, something like that.
And now when we're talking about this journey, getting his degree, my uncle Munro getting his degree, and then he started traveling, and he shows up in 1920. He is in the 1920 census in Minnesota. You see? Yes. Now, the question I have for you, did he, is it, what woman is the link?
Well, that would be, I mean, my grandmother?
Yes.
My dad's mother?
Yeah.
That would be Edna. Her last name was Flathill.
Yes.
Although another sidebar to this is that during some of the census, she was referred to as Edna Napper, who was her, in the census refers to her as her father. John Napper was born in Virginia on a plantation, the Manassas plantation, right about the time of 1864. So he could have or could not have been a slave, but they stayed on in that. They were found in the census there for quite a few years afterward. And how we got to Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, we don't really know, but I assume is the whole family picked up and left from what we could gather.
Okay. That being said,
that's another story.
Yeah. Well, no. You had we know that we're connected, and we're connected through, based off of your testimony, uh,
Yay.
your grandmother Edna,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
All right. So let's focus just a little bit on her. Tell us what you know about your grandmother, Edna.
Going back to her, she was born in Milwaukee. We suspect by reading between the lines that her mother, that would be Clara Flathead, became pregnant while living in Iowa, living with her mom, or in Milwaukee, as far as we know, anywhere. And that's where she was born. And the birth certificate only shows Clara as the mother and no father listed. It was, and from there, that was in 1893. We catch up to her then, and her mother with her grandmother, or Clara's mother, Julie Napper, what was her married name. They were living up in Superior, Wisconsin. We believe that's where Edna went to school. We found some locations, some of the addresses that were no longer there, but and then at some point they come down to Minneapolis, because that's where Julie and John Napper have a marriage certificate, although the census says they were married for quite a long time. And then they, John and Julie moved back to Superior. And then in 1919, Julie died. John moved down to St. Paul and moved in into a all, as they put it, all colored old folks home, because he was kind of old by then. And he passed away, I believe, in the 30s. So that put him into a ripe 60s to 70 range. And he was mostly a porter, a waiter, a janitor, just about what everybody else did. Whatever they could find to work. And that's how they worked. I suspect that he was in Milwaukee as well, but they probably couldn't live together in Milwaukee. That would be Clara and her mother probably could not, probably weren't allowed to live with a black man in that point. We don't have any pictures of John. We only knew he was black for certain when he was admitted into the home in St. Paul.
Well, the John, how is he? He's a black man. How is he? Pardon me? He's black, John. John was black.
Mike, yes, he's black. John was black.
Okay, now John, what did he do? Who did he marry? And how is he part of this?
He married Julie Offey. That would have been Clara Flathead's. Well, would have been Clara Flathead's mother. So Clara was a stepdaughter to John Napper and Julie Napper. So the mother was Julie Offey, who was born in Illinois and was raised in Iowa with all her big family.
Did your grandmother Edna have any more kids?
Just my dad. There was a rumor about having twins, but we never found any death certificates or anything else mentioned about it. Twins in the marriage, but that could have been another story for all we know.
And your dad, he wasn't. His name. What was his name?
James Clinton McGee.
But he wasn't Edna's kid. One of them, like
James.
Huh? Edna's kid.
That would be James, the one and only.
Could that be? Oh, his name is James.
Yes, James Clinton.
Edna named him James.
Well, yeah, I suppose he named him James, and Raleigh is on the birth certificate. So,
well, do you see the coalition here? James Munro Moss.
Yes and no, because the middle name is named after her brother.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm saying James.
I think there were some offies that were named James too, but who knows?
Okay,
I don't know.
but James.
Yeah, but I can see that connection
Okay, so
or possibility is probably the better way to say it.
So here we are. Um, let's see. Now you are. What can you tell us? What can you tell us about the person you say James something McGee, but the McGee is not the family, but the James is your DNA. This is Edna's son James, who's your father, and you're from him. You know, you're from that father, the father and his man. So that's the connection. Edna, your father James, and you and Pat.
And my brother Jim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's how we are connected through this line. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. Through James Munro?
Yes, unless you have, yes. I see that now.
Okay, because I'm gonna be frank about this. I see a little bit of equivocation. I was asking about Edna, your Edna, but then when it came down to it, she had a son, and that's your father, right?
Yes.
He's your biological father.
Right. Yes.
Hey, y'all, what does that say? Tommy, what does that say?
It says that he's his father.
Yeah. We just don't know who the grandfather is, but it's presumably pointing towards James Munro.
Okay. That's what these conversations are. You know, I talked about the rose and the thorn, and that's where we're at. And you know, there's a way of communicating that information. And again,
do you see any other possible explanation? The only other thing I would say is James or Munro had a brother that would have been on the same line.
No, those brothers don't. His brothers were in California.
Well, that was the other explanation. If they weren't nearby, then they couldn't likely happen.
Hey, cousin Mike, we dealing with science.
That's right. Science and location. Yeah.
All right. So there we are. So, and then, where do we go from here? That's the question. What we do, we move forward.
I have a long memory.
That's what we do. We move forward. Okay, we'll get back with you, Juanita. We move forward, guys. And
yeah, we took it in you and you try to get me on next time.
We move forward and share what we need to share, and be transparent about it, because Mike, on these matches, there's some more of these McGees that are matching me, and these are your nieces and nephews and all them.
Karen would be my daughter, Pat, my brother.
Yeah, well, they're matching.
Yeah, and there's no other McGees.
Yeah, well, okay, with these.
Yeah, that's what kind of drew us really close to this conclusion. Since we don't have any other McGees in our family, other than the only connection to the McGees would be Flathead, which would have been the name, which would have been Edna's mother's father. Julie, her mother married a Flathead, and we see that in the tree, the Flathead name in the tree.
Yeah.
So we know that we come down from Clara Flathead to Edna, but no McGees, or the other grandmother name in there. So that kind of draws us way to the other edge of the family tree, saying, okay, now it certainly is with no other explanation possible as Munro Moss. Unless, that's how I look at it at this moment.
Yeah.
And can't see many more ways around it.
No, and you helped tremendously with your story. And you guys, that's one of the reasons why, we're the men, we're the leaders, we're the ones, we're the kings of the family. We're the patriots in a sense. But one thing for sure, we're the family historians. And that's a task, that's a big honor to have. And I don't take it lightly. So when we talk, we have to be transparent. and then I'd much rather work with the truth than speculation. And that's what this science has given us. So again, I want to move forward with it. If any more crossing the T's and dotting I's, that's fine. If you need more help with filling out your trees, or any more stories on the family from my perspective, I am the spokesman.
Tell me again, did James Munro have the green eyes, or how did you describe them? You said they were green.
They're like hazel.
Gray, okay, gray-green eyes trait. You said hazel.
Yeah.
Okay, or hazel. Okay.
Yeah.
Or they change colors depending on the.
Yeah, but they're very.
I will go back and look. I'm pretty sure my dad he didn't have brown eyes. I know. Either had green or.
Yeah, they're very distinguishable. I mean, they set out. They stand out. These eyes. That's one of our characteristics that we have in the family. And like I said, it goes both ways. But that's that is. And when she mentioned that, when Juanita, I wrote that down.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, I'm colorblind, so I couldn't tell you other than what they would say. They got funny eyes.
Yeah.
When there's kids, funny looking eyes. I tell you, boy, the ones who have them, they're a handful too. Huh? What's that?
Do you have much information about the Moss family before Arkansas?
No.
Any stories or anything that you?
No. Other than, like I said, I just go back to the 1850 slave schedule. William Moss. And I got that from when I first started doing research. One of my, I've had mentors. Most of them are women.
Yes.
Frances Haywood. You'll see her pop up, Frances Haywood, and Diane Trotter. Those are two of my my mentors that have helped me. And Frances, she had a pedigree tree, before Family Tree Maker. She had it before, it got modernized. But she had a program, and she had a pedigree tree, and that's how she gave me that information.
Right.
And so from that pedigree tree, I was able to trace it back to the 1850s, and then 1850s census. And then that's when I started my research, Tommy. And, with, the Hempstead County, Arkansas, all that. Right. But on there, this Moss family, they were born in Alabama.
Right.
And then previous to that, it was Virginia.
Yeah, I have them in Kentucky. Well, the Reverend Thomas Moss that we talked about the time before, I had him in Kentucky before he moved to Alabama. And then from Alabama, he died in Alabama. His son and his grandson and his wife moved to Arkansas. They were slave owners. and moved to Arkansas. And same area, census for them in Alabama as slave owners, census for them in Arkansas as slave owners. That's where the William A. Moss came in that we discussed. And then that's when James Munro moved, at the point where he moved to Arkansas. Well, first we have to go back to after the Civil War, right? So they're slave owners before the Civil War. After the Civil War, they're no longer slave owners, and that's when it looks like people are starting to scatter and go different directions, into Texas, into Nebraska, Howard University, that kind of stuff. So I've got them moving from Kentucky to Alabama. Alabama's where they picked up a lot of the slaves, owned a lot of land. Looks like the Reverend Thomas Moss passed away. He was from England. He passes away, and then the family moves to Arkansas, and then my piece of the Moss family ends up moving to North Texas. And I have them on slave schedules, owning slaves, on census. And what I'm trying to figure out is which one of the, how this diverges, because there's people in here that cross paths, right? So we've got to have children, interracial children. And that's the reason I was asking about who Munro, James Munro, who his father was. Was it really Reuben Moss? If it was Reuben Moss and you get back to Alabama where he was born, then that puts his father can't be William Moss. He'd have been too young for that. His father would have had to have been.
Okay, well, hold it right there. Let me just tell you this.
All right.
Let me tell you. Let me give you some Mossology.
Okay.
Back in 1850 slave schedule. The slave schedule's owner was named William Moss, period. Okay. And he had a number of slaves, Tommy. And from those, one of those slaves was named, slaves during those times, they didn't have names, they just had ages.
Right.
And so what we did, what happened after the slaves were freed, they took on the slave owner's name. Okay. So whether it was this William Moss that you're talking about or another William Moss, I know one thing, at 1850 slave schedules, my ancestor was one of those slaves. And then when they were free.
In Arkansas or Alabama?
No, it's in the 1850 slave schedule in Hempstead County, Arkansas. Ozan Township. Ozan Township.
You sure that's not 18? I thought that was the 1860.
No, it was 1850. You know, he had the slaves. William Moss had them 1850, and he had them 1860. He had more. He started off with like about 26, and then by 1850 he had about 5 more. 1860 he had about 5 more of them. That same William Moss, and he passed away in 1882. If this is the one that William Moss passed away about 1882.
Because I have a William in Arkansas, and I also have, which would have been his uncle or brother, Jackson Moss, as a slave owner in the same part of Arkansas at the same time. That's
okay. Well, see, here's what you're saying. Here's what you're saying, that there's a difference in terms. You're saying the same part, same this, same that. You know, you're not pinpointing. I am pinpointing I have to be a little more specific when I talk. Now, as for exactly who these Mosses are, these white Mosses are, I can't tell you for sure. But I can tell you that I got the Moss name from a William Moss. And when I trace my ancestries back to the 1850 slave schedule. That's who it was. His name was William Moss, and we've had that name ever since that. We got that name from a slave owner from the 1850 slave schedule, and that's in Hampstead County, Arkansas, Ozan Township. That's the one to focus on.
There was also an Alabama township. What I mean, same area. Those were counties, but not really towns in that place. So
they were townships.
Yes, exactly.
I know the Hempstead County is a county. You know what?
Yes.
I have cousins right now who live in Hope,
Yes.
Arkansas. They live
Yes.
in Washington. See, Washington was one of the main trade routes from the Red River, and I can even go one step further. Now,
Oh wow.
yeah, I can go one step further. You know, this is a little speculative, but that owner, William Moss, he had a steamboat. He was part of merchant trades, William Moss, the one who plantation, and it was more like a farm. His was like a farm. And
Right.
Yeah, he had like a farm, and they had some bad weather back then, flooding, and other owners shared with each other in order to prop up and keep everything afloat. You know, back then in those areas, they worked together.
Interesting.
And so I have, to this degree, I have cousins who have gotten some of the land, who have land right there in Ozan County, Hope, Arkansas. They live there right now. DNA cousins. So and all my people, I'm talking about my cluster, Prescott,
Right.
Hope, Nevada County. That's where Willisville, that's where the clusters of our people, they're from. And that's where, and I even have the cemeteries where some of them are buried in Arkansas, right in that area. So,
wow.
Yeah, so that's my cluster, and that's why I can say it with confidence.
Interesting. So it might not even be the same Moss, right? It might be a different family.
That's true. That's true. But I tell you what, we got the same DNA. Names.
That's exactly the point I'm trying to make. That's what I'm trying to connect, because the stories that you're telling me, this is exactly what I was looking for. The stories that you're telling me was not what I had put together in my head, which is good. That means that's, you challenge a thought, and that's how you get to the truth. And so I've got to go rethink some of that.
Yeah,
I've got this.
Say my cousin T, I took it upon myself, I challenged myself too. I took it upon myself to go a little further, because I knew there's going to be a time where I'm gonna have to deal with what I call, I'm gonna be transparent with you guys. I call it the folks. You know who that is? Mike, you know who the folks are? That's the white folks.
Well, so this.
Now, hold on. Let me finish what I'm saying.
Sorry, you come to a good point.
So when I use it in a empathetic term, but sometimes when I'm talking to all my other family members and we go through all these things, that's my term. When I'm talking to my kids, the folks. When we're talking about the folks, we're talking about sometimes in generalities, but we're talking about white folks.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure I did my best research to find out what I could about, the connections from the white side of my family. And that's why I did go a little further.
Exactly.
And I have this kind of information that when I do encounter DNA relatives that are, lighter complexion than me, I would be able to talk to them and share what I know.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much my take on it.
the Moss side of the family is something I had never really looked at until you and Val contacted me. And the reason being is I followed the Lewis side, you know, my surname. That's where I was working. My father and mother's side. The Moss married into the family, I told you, and then died 100 years ago in Spanish flu. So we didn't know anything. I can't find anybody other than y'all that knows anything about that. So everything I've got is just census and DNA, and then assumptions after that. And so you're helping me put together pieces here and stuff.
Yeah, and
this is good. This is real good.
And Mike, what did it mean? So when we talked on your journey that you took that GEDmatch test?
I did. I took the GEDmatch stick, and I think Val came up the second one behind me.
Yeah.
So that was significant. And then, of course, there's a lot of other names that goes on and on and on, but you can't tell who they are because they use their other names. I would use their other their abbreviation names or whatever usernames. But it kind of reinforced what the DNA was talking about in the second group. That's when I reached out to Val, because I saw her on the ancestry then and looked back. Yeah, I said, well, it looks like it's second or third cousin. I thought, and I kept looking at the chart and trying to wrap my head around that, but it turns out am I correct to say she's a first cousin once removed or second cousin once removed?
Yes.
One of the two.
Mm-hmm. And through this journey here, more specifically, I asked Tommy, "Hey, Tommy, could I get your DNA?" And Tommy gave me his DNA. I mean, his GEDmatch kit, and I did a comparison with Tommy also on GEDmatch. Mm-hmm. And hey, Tommy, you've seen our GEDmatch comparison?
Yes. Yes.
What did you see?
Val right at the top, just like Mike did. He was like the second one, or Val was the second one on my list. I didn't see you at all.
I saw him way down below. Down, of course, there's a lot of.
Oh, I need to go farther. Yeah.
But what it tells us is we got our DNA matches.
Yes.
Yes. So, and again, when we're talking to people who are very seasoned age-wise in the 80s and almost 90s, and then they're saying that they've talked to somebody, their great-great-grandparents, they're reaching pretty far back there. And that's one of the reasons when I was able to talk to Juanita, I asked her, have you ever met, my Uncle James Munro? And she said yes. Mm-hmm. And y'all heard the story that she gave us. Mm-hmm. Those are kind of things, man, when somebody's talking like that, step back.
You need to listen. You need to listen.
Yeah, let them go, And you think, y'all think that's something, wait till we get an opportunity to talk to Val. We get a chance to talk to her like this. See, she has more information. Yeah. See.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And so we'll be able to, hey gentlemen, we'll be able to ask questions like questions like I asked. Did y'all catch that?
Yes.
We get to ask them those kind of questions. Because hey, they got the information, man. Them sisters, hey, they got some information. They're intelligent. Our cousins, them two, Juanita and Val, they're intelligent. Yes. They got some information. Yeah. Hey, Mike, just like when I was talking to you originally, when I let Val know, I got her from a second person. I had a match with somebody who was a 5th through 8th cousin, and I sent them a message. But when you keep doing the shared matches, to get you closer and closer to your family. And then her name came up. So I sent her my reach out group message, and she responded. So, but when I started talking to her a little bit about, we're relatives and the rest, she treated me with a long handle spoon.
Okay, that kind of like the same reaction I had the first time we had a conversation.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what this is all about.
Yeah, man. So, hey.
Well, it comes completely out of the blue.
Yeah. And now we know, and then here it is almost a year or so later, we're building our relationship. So that's what we want to do, build a solid relationship. And that's why I did a lot of research, and I wanted you gentlemen to share with you as much as I could about my research, so you can have that and verify, of course verify, but we all have something to add to our family portrait. And so that's what we're doing. We're adding to our family portrait. I had no control over what my ancestors did. I can only account for what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact they're as human as we are. So, they went through, they're going through the same thing in 1918 as we are now. So,
yeah, nothing new under the sun. But just, it brings joy to me, that we had a chance to talk, and feel free, going forward at any time, any kind of communications, feel free to call, talk, whichever way you want, to communicate with me. As long as I'm able, I'm open.
I'm sure my brother would like to join us at some point in the future, and I'll try to fill him in with my notes that I've made too. So you'll be probably more confused than I am. So, but I do have a pretty good gist of where all this came from and who is Munro Moss. And
well, what would be cool? You said his vocation is attorney. He's an attorney, right?
Yep.
So he'll add that. He'll add that dimension to the dynamics of conversation. And so we don't have to wait on anyone. Whenever you guys feel like you've got more information and you want to fill in some more, with us, share it, man. Like Tommy, I wanted to focus. One of my purposes today, I just want to let you know, is I wanted to be able to connect with Mike.
Right.
And you see how some of this conversation was. And I wanted him to learn more about who his ancestors was, I wanted him to know about what I knew, as much as I can share with you about my uncle, James Munro Moss. I wanted to get as much information as we could flush out today so he can have that. And I've learned.
Yes, me too. A lot.
Yeah, so that was that one. And when we get and when we get an opportunity, like Mike, when we get on another conversation, Tommy, we'll tighten up our connection. We'll see where you come in. I want to know a little bit more about you. And one thing that I value what you've done, what you've added to our family dynamics, you've taken us pre 1800s.
Yes.
When you start,
yes.
Yeah, you're taking us in that up in that area. And Mike, quite frankly, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I don't know if I'm gonna go down that road right now. You see, you out there, Tommy. So, but I'm gonna keep you on the team.
Yeah.
Because I got to work myself up to you, man.
But like I said, I've never looked at any of this before, and I'm happy about it. To be honest, I'm perfectly happy about
Yeah,
it.
it is.
To
And
me, the
then,
more the merrier.
yeah, you really
Just mix it
helped us.
up. The more you mix it up, the better off you.
Yeah, and you really helped us with my genealogy group. When you were in that meeting.
Yeah.
Oh man, they
Yeah.
ate that up.
Oh, good. Yeah, I was just surprised when I found out that my family had moved through the same part of Arkansas as everybody else's family had. And I know, like I said, well, like you said, I know I'm being general, but just in general, that whole family kind of moved across that part. And so there's an intersection and there's DNA and so.
And that's why when I talk on these terms, when I'm doing my research and I have our family groups, I always stress our cluster. See, because these clusters, they lived in the same community, and what happened, they intermarried with different people, different families, and then you see those results on our DNA.
Exactly.
And then when we go back, they're in the same areas. And then when they talk to their grandparents or, these new millennials who are taking these tests and they're showing up as a match and they want to know about what's going on, I'll just give them, well, this cluster, that's what I can tell them. I know about this moss cluster. And so that's why I stay in my lane with this cluster right here.
So to be more specific, the James Munro moss cluster, that's more around Prescott and Hope, right? Arkansas? And I saw he was born in Prescott.
Here's the counties. Let's go by counties and then stay in that.
Yes.
Hempstead County, Columbia County,
yes.
and Nevada County,
yes.
Arkansas.
Yes. My bunch were more around Nevada County, Alabama Township. They came straight from Alabama to Arkansas, well, from Alabama to Arkansas, and that's where they settled in that general area.
And then, Tommy, what I've seen with my research, it's now if you want to talk about a region that you bring in more people, you talk about the Texarkana.
Yes.
Texarkana, Louisiana, all three of them. That's the region.
Yes.
And then I deal when I'm talking with my Moss genealogy and research group. Now they're more in that whole region because a lot of them are Texans. Because they moved from, they wasn't far, because that was they had a route from Little Rock, Arkansas. They built this down through Washington, Arkansas. Then it goes down to Texarkana. That was the route. You know what I mean? That was one of the migration routes on their way to Oklahoma and everywhere else.
Wow.
So that's the region. But again, I most of my DNA matches, when I talk to them, we communicate, they're from that cluster area. It goes back to that area. And you're right. A lot of them didn't even know it. They don't have that family history. They haven't.
I don't have any pictures. All I've got are, well, from the family, I've got a painting that was done of Mineola moss, which is my great great grandmother, and then I've got pictures of cemeteries and stuff like that, but that's it. There's no pictures of.
Well, Tommy, you and Val, you guys have a pretty significant number of DNA, don't you? See, Central Morgan?
Yes. Yeah, it's just north of 100.
Yeah. What about you, Tommy? I mean, Mike.
Yeah, I think she's way above 100. Like I
Yes.
said, the second cousin once removed, or first cousin once removed. Like she's below that second group of second cousins. She's in that third and fourth
Yeah,
category.
that's where she is with me as well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But this Chauncey, can't remember, he's like number one on that second group besides other family member.
Who's Chauncey?
I didn't pull his name up. He could see him as he shared matches with me. He's way up there on the top. He's with Val's too.
Oh, he is. He's in her group, huh?
Yeah. When we looked at, that's how I kind of categorize them. If they don't have family, I go back and say, who's your shared members with? And if I see a couple, I said, well, that's got to be the Moss group then.
Yeah, that's how I do it too. Yeah, like we're analytical. It's not. This isn't rocket science, but it's science. This is God science.
From the very beginning.
But again, gentlemen, doing your research and as you go through, it's impossible for us to answer every question. So I just answer what I can, and then I keep going. I stay at my pace and keep it real. And some people are going for they go, some of my DNA relatives, they want to know so much information, personal information. And I'd say I'll talk to you on the side to a certain degree. But we all got a flavor of what you want to share and what you don't want to share. Am I right?
Well,
I'm an open book. I'll tell you anything you want.
I mean, they're all gone by now.
Yeah.
But still, even the information we have in the wrong hands can hurt some feelings.
I agree.
Probably.
So that's where discernment comes. That's part of our task to decide and give what you need to give to those who you get the most value. But just don't put your pearls amongst quote unquote swine and let them trample over it. This is holy
You say
ground.
Trump over it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, no doubt about it. But the big bad wolf, he's gone. He's gonna be out of here. Hey man, I've had a great time. I'm gonna have some closing comments. I'll start off. Hey, it's been really informative. I've looked forward to this ever since Val set it up, and I look forward to having more conversations with you. Each one of you, and it's been fun, and I've enjoyed the camaraderie, and I feel closer to you. And my goal is to build a solid relationship. Tommy?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's nice to meet you, Mike. I look forward to meeting Pat. Like I said, when I find somebody or somebody contacts me that I don't know and I can't figure out how to put them in my tree, then I start a new tree with those people in it. So I kind of was looking at I added you to my moss tree, the moss tree that I have with Val in it and stuff, and I created one for the McGee's as well, and so I could kind of get an idea of who is who and where they fit into all this. It's fascinating. It gives me something to do, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And I can't find anybody to talk to about this kind of stuff because a lot of people don't care anything about genealogy, but but I do. I thoroughly enjoy it,
and I look, like I said,
it's just, to me,
and with you, please help me focus a little bit more on that, the William Moss that's in Hempstead County, Ozanne Township, the 1850 census.
You've given me something to think about, to seriously think about, because I think I may have been I think I may have made some assumptions about the which William Moss that we were talking about.
Right.
And right, and the William Mosses that I wouldn't talk, it would have been farms or cows. And the whole riverboat thing was fascinating. And the fact that I don't think, well, I'm almost positive from looking at the census and stuff, the William Moss that I have, he didn't show up until, it would have been after the 1850 census was done. So, because they all show up in Alabama in the 1850 census, 1850 slave schedules. I need to go find a William Moss in that area, the slave schedules and census that were there by 18.
Okay, I don't know if you've seen it on one of my emails, but I'll send you the information I have, and then you can,
I think I have that.
Yeah,
it's in the thread of that email.
Yeah, it is. That's the one, and that's why. That's the one. It has the information that I have on them, and then you and I can go a little bit further. And like I said, I'm not going to go down areas. I'm not going to go too far, but I'll go far as I need to go because I'm moving forward. I'm not going back.
Well, yeah, exactly. I understand that, but you still. There's pieces that I'm trying to fit together here, or that everybody's trying to fit together, and sometimes you have to look.
It'll help because you see our next project. My group is so thirsty for knowledge, and we have some serious genealogists in our group, and now what we're going to be doing is having a GEDmatch group in a separate GEDmatch group in GEDmatch. About 50 people, our GEDmatch numbers, we're going to be a group, and we're going to put that in GEDmatch under one of their research study groups to see the connections of the family.
Oh, I see.
And
so how does that work?
Well, let me just.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's good. What happens is, our group, they are so intense and talented that they take these steps and this research to a whole different level. So what I have to do is just keep my hands around what they're doing and at least keep us all in where we can move forward as a group. But I see I have scouts out there just setting things up, and I got to feed them. You know what I mean? I got to give them something to keep on the wall. So they heavyweights. I got to feed them.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were you going to ask
Fascinating.
me? Were you going to ask me? You had something. I interrupted you.
I don't know.
Okay, Mike, could you give us some closing comments?
You've given me a lot to think about. Nice meeting you finally, and you too, Tommy. And it's a strange world. And
it is.
It's you never know where the next curveball is coming from. So, but it is what it is, and we go from there. Move forward, as you say, Jerry.
Let me tell you something.
I think as I repeat all this to my brother. Yes.
No, go on, Mike. Go on.
I was going to say, as I repeat all this to my brother and read through the emails that Val sent me, it'll become a little bit more clear to me, and I can, get my head around it. It's just that there's so many Mosses.
And that's
trying to figure out, but I'm circled in on which one I should pay attention to.
That's right. So
I've never told this to anybody, but I'm going to tell it to you two. I knew there was something about the Moss family in my tree. I sensed there was something years ago when I first started working, but I just did work on that side. I continued to work on the Lewis side and my mother's side and that kind of stuff. And this is completely new stuff to me and fascinating. Sometimes the genealogy stuff just sits there and nothing happens for a long long time. You know, you kind of you this, that, and then all of a sudden something will break through and you'll go, wow, whole new
Yep.
world. Whole new world. Yep.
It does.
Yep.
So let's press forward, and um, I'll be having a recording of this meeting, and it'll be a private one. Only you, the ones who are here, will be able to see it. It won't go
Okay.
to the group.
Yeah.
And
That's fine.
then we can take it from there, because it helps sometimes when you go back over, the meetings to see what else you can ask. You learn different things from different people.
Gotcha.
And then we'll go from there. We had Juanita, and you see she's interesting.
Yes, she is. Can you buy her books? Are they for sale?
Yeah. And
that last book, or one of them she was discussing, I want to read like now, right?
Yeah, well, if you you can do that, or once you communicate with her, give her your address and she'll mail you one.
Well, yeah, that would work too. So, but I
she
do want to read that book.
She will, like she's, she she's a winner, man. She wants to share what she's learned. And again, she is she's connected. She's our relative through marriage. And man, whenever you married to, family for 65 years.
Yeah, wow.
Come on.
Yeah.
She's picked up the baton, and an educator, and she's really helped. She's helped, and what we've done, we brought her in and said, come on, hey, come on, you can play. Come on, we'll play with you. Come on in with all your because she's got some tools. She's got some good information for us. And just pray for Val. And soon, if not sooner, we'll all be on and we'll be able to answer some questions. But some of the more serious questions, I believe we've covered here, haven't we?
I think so. Yeah. To me, it's not really that sensitive for me personally.
Not yet. Just give you a little time.
Well, I'm good. I'm good. It still won't be that sensitive. I'm good with whatever happens. Because like you said before, this is all somebody else is doing. Right? Whatever happened. I'm just,
I hear you, man.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, enjoy your day, huh?
All right. Nice holiday.
Okay.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye.
Okay. It's all good. It's all God. Peace.